gummy bear.
It's the internet, you're busy, let's do this for May 1st, 2023 for the next hour or so. Let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, the triumphs and failures of Jedi Survivor, and Nintendo may have to start dealing with a major leak very soon. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Rebekah Valentine. Rebekah, how are you doing?
Good morning. You've caught me at my witching hour this morning. So I'm awake, energized, and ready to go.
That was the plan. That was the whole idea. We want to make sure we get you at the witching hour. It's when you're at your best, of course. No, but Reb, I'm like we were saying before we started the show and stuff. We've never met, but I interact with you all the time. And it's just this is fantastic to have you on here. How are things going? How's IGN? How's all that stuff?
It's pretty great. I'm in the IGN office right now. You can see there's a big Zelda shield above my head. So cool. That's where I am. Works great. Currently gearing up for Tears of the Kingdom mainly because that's just gonna be bombastic for everybody. And started chasing extra stuff. I read all 418 pages of the CMA's final ruling on Activision Blizzard on Friday. So that was my week last week.
I read. I tried to read the 90 paragraph summary, and I mostly got through it. And I'm like, okay, cheesy, crazy. Any fun tidbits in there that you really stuck out to you?
Yeah, I wrote a couple little articles. I think there was a section where they pulled a bunch of publishers on how much their games cost to make. And I think we all listening to this, most people probably know that games are very expensive to make. But the one that really stuck out to me was apparently one publisher, anonymous, we don't know which one. I have guesses. Was saying that their game, their franchise costs $650 million to make, and then $550 million in marketing. So that's over $1 billion to make a game, which seems absolutely nuts to me.
Yeah, that is nuts. I mean, that's when we talk about all this stuff. Half of the things on this show can be explained by that number. I think that's how much a game can cost to make these days. And so when people cut corners, or when other things go wrong, or when these companies act like they're deathly afraid of risk, well, it's that much money on the line explains it all. Yeah. All right, let's get into this mess. But before we do, we'll explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings, or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Jedi Survivor is the UK's second biggest box launch of the year. This comes from Andy Robinson at VGC. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is the second biggest physical game launch of the year in the UK, according to GfK data published by GI.biz. The EA title was bested only by Hogwarts Legacy in terms of physical launch sales in the UK, but the game is well ahead of Resident Evil 4, which is in third place. It's also the 8th biggest Star Wars box release from the last 30 years, despite opening week sales coming in 35% lower than what its predecessor, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, managed. It's worth emphasizing that this data is for box sales only. Since Fallen Order was released in 2019, digital adoption has accelerated significantly. Jedi Survivor also retailed for $10 more or £10 more. This is, I think it's a bit surprising that this game is doing so well, even though we see the comparison there to the last game, because you expect that word of mouth based on the performance to come in there and do some damage, and yet ahead of Resident Evil 4. That's really impressive.
Really, you think so? I mean, Resident Evil 4 is incredible, but it's a remake.
It's
right?
It's a remake, but it was
it was a Star Wars
game. Yeah, I mean, I guess when you compare it to Hogwarts Legacy, maybe you expect it to be up there with those kind of numbers for a big IP can do. But I don't know. I guess I was just expecting that those reviews to hurt this game pretty harshly. At least I suppose it probably is digitally on Steam, where it's the most affected. But yeah, for them, I don't know. I actually am a bit surprised that this is doing this well.
Yeah, no, I'm not too shocked. I think this is, I don't know what game I would have expected to beat it like that. Cause it's May. We haven't gotten far enough into the
Right.
year yet for there to be a whole lot of things to just kick its butt. I think Resident Evil 4 is correctly the one that would be most likely to do so. But again, because it's a remake, and again, kind of taking into account that we're not really sure what the platform skew is on that necessarily, and how box digital affects everything. This doesn't shock me too much. I think this sounds about right. I'm curious what the long tail on it will be as
Yes.
well. Especially I saw there was a patch today. It's this morning. I haven't looked at the game yet since the patch went up, so I don't know if it's better now. I'm curious how that will affect it.
Yeah, I got that email when I was setting this stuff up that they made a bunch of improvements on PC first and consoles later. But we'll get into some of that stuff that they're talking about in the next story. But yeah, this is that long tail will be the big thing here. I think that's what we did see that with Elden Ring last year. We saw and Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga really just kept selling like all through the end of the year. And now Hogwarts Legacy this year did pretty similar stuff where it came out and then it just kept selling. Does this follow that similar trajectory, or does this negativity around the performance dampen that at all? It seems like with games these days, I think this is the calculation at least, that you get out there, as long as you have a somewhat okay launch, you can then build on that. And with pre-orders so de-emphasized, these things can have the long tail, and you just rely on the updates and patches to bring some positive word of mouth, and eventually everyone's like, "Oh, I'm pretty happy with this," and then it gets another boost down the line. We'll see if that works out for this. 35% lower than Fallen Order. That's Do you think digital has changed that much since 2019?
Yes. I listen to quarterly earnings calls every quarter. I don't, this is redundant. Of Take-Two, EA, all those folks, and I haven't actually sat down and done the math on how high their digital share has jumped, like digital share of sales, digital net bookings and things like that. But I noticed like every single quarter, all these third-party publishers are reporting digital's up, which indicates to me that I don't think physical is ever going to go away. It's always going to be a thing for games, but I do think we're going to continue to see the digital share rise by little inches year after year.
Yeah, and it's it's been happening for a while, and this story eventually points out that Xbox in the UK is especially digital. That's something that kind of always gets pointed out, because 18% of physical copies were sold on Xbox compared to some huge number for 82% obviously then for PS5. And it's like, okay, yeah, is that all just the PS5 being more popular? It's a big part of it, but also there are a lot more Xbox Series S's in the UK, and that's digital only, and that really does affect things. So it's it kind of brings us to a question we ask here a lot. Do you think the next consoles have disk drives?
Yeah, I mean, I bet they split it the way they did this time around, with a disc version and a diskless. I think we're all kind of kidding ourselves to think that there's not a significant portion of the games market that still really, really wants physical games and would riot if there was not some sort of option for that. I mean, PlayStation didn't even really they offered a diskless console this generation.
They didn't really sell it, did they?
Do you know anybody who has one?
Me, but I had to track it down. It took me a long time. I wanted the digital only to be weird, I guess. I had
sure. How do you like it?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I had the disc version at first, and then I waited till I could find a discless version and swapped that in and gave my other one to my nephew. And so, yeah, it was like, but it was really hard to find. It was like 1-to-10, the ratio of discless to ones with a disc drive. So did Sony really believe in that? I don't know, but it's like they have this whole generation to slowly morph people over in that direction. It seems like the rumor around the PS5 revision is that it's going to be a diskless console, and they'll sell you a disc drive separately. We'll see how they try to do that, if they try to do that at all. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the next generation actually ends up looking like, where you can get a disc drive if you want, but at that point, that's what it's going to be. That's the same thing as like not including one, because most people are not going to buy that thing, and then that means most publishers wouldn't make a disc. So yeah, I don't know. I still think you're probably right in the long run. All right. Respawn apologizes for the state of Star Wars Jedi Survivor on PC. Hey, chill out, kiddo. This comes from Jordan Midler at VGC. Respawn has apologized for the launch state of Star Wars Jedi Survivor on PC. Quote, this is a quote from them. We are aware that Star Wars Jedi Survivor isn't performing to our standards for a percentage of our PC players, in particular those with high-end machines or certain configurations, the company said. When Star Wars Jedi Survivor was released on Friday, PC players reported severe issues, including stuttering, frequent crashes, and issues wherein opening and closing the game too frequently caused a crash because the game thought it was being opened on multiple systems. That's the DRM, some sort of DRM. People don't think it's de novo, but some sort of DRM is causing issues for people who like close it and open it, trying to fix and troubleshoot issues. Digital Foundry's analysis of the PC version called it the worst AAA PC port of 2023 so far. Yeah, that's pretty rough. In response to this, the company said, well, while there's no single comprehensive solution for PC performance, the team has been working on fixes we believe will improve performance across a spectrum of configurations. We are committed to fixing these issues as soon as possible, but each patch requires significant testing to ensure we don't introduce new problems. We did get that email this morning about the PC performance fix, and that's what they said. It's just this fixes performance on PC, and that's it. And then Xbox and PlayStation 5 will get a patch tomorrow that is going to have a lot of other different stuff, mostly fixing crashes and issues with those things. Rebekah, I wonder if we can diagnose why we keep seeing this happen with PC games this year. Do you have any notion there?
So disclaimer on this, I'm not like a technical expert. I'm not the best at sitting there and doing Digital Foundry, staring at frame rate and going, yes, it's the
counting
it's
pixels. Yeah.
Whatever it is.
It's the damn de novo.
Right. But the big broad answer that I think is true in pretty much all of these cases is that you're dealing with a situation where developers, the people who are making these games, they know this is happening, number one, and two, they don't want to release games like this. Like, they don't like it any more than we do. It's embarrassing, and they know it. But there's a lot of other factors at play, right? Like deadlines have been imposed by people with money, and who want to make money, usually like publishers or shareholders or whoever is in charge of making those decisions and making promises to those people. And then, when that deadline looms, your game is functionally done, it's content complete, and you're trying to optimize it. You're trying to get it into the best possible state, fix bugs, and you're kind of, picking and choosing the things that you fix. And you're going to try to fix the things that are most obvious to you, that are happening in your testing, and that are like the worst possible things, so that everyone has a relatively okay experience. Like, if your game is crashing every 5 seconds, that's the thing you're going to want to fix, right? And maybe performance slides for a day one patch because you don't have time. And that's just kind of the unfortunate reality. So I don't really have the technical answers as to why this is happening, especially on PC, but I do think PCs are generally harder to optimize for because there's so many different configurations and kinds, and you're not like, every PS5 is effectively the same, but every PC is, kind of functionally different. And so, it's hard. Making games is hard. And I have a lot of sympathy for this. It's very frustrating as players. I have a lot of solutions, and none of them involve being mean to developers.
Yeah, I mean, they delayed this game 6 weeks. They said it was to improve the polish on the final product. They're fully aware of what these things are and what's wrong with these games. That's been the case every time we get one of these things. The developers always really know what's wrong. So it's like, it must be out of their hands at a certain extent. Because like you said, they don't want to be doing this. So when we try to figure out what's going on, it's everything you said. It is the pressures to deliver a certain product on a certain timeline. Because games, every day you don't release a game, it's just costing money. That's all it does. It's just that red number on the ledger. It's just like, okay, that's another day. That's another $25,000 and down the drain, and we're not making money. And at a certain point, someone's going to want to just flip that switch and be like, okay, can we start bringing in money, even if it's not the most, because there will be some percentage that's upset that it doesn't run the way it should run. Well, maybe we could fix that in the long run, because again, pre-orders have been so de-emphasized. So maybe it'll end up selling a ton through the holiday, and that's what we actually want. So yeah, it's frustrating, but it's also at a certain point, that's the math for a lot of these companies. And yeah, go ahead.
Clearly doesn't matter, right? Not to dredge up an old thing, but Pokemon, a really good example. I reviewed that game for IGN, performance-wise and just generally visually, bug-wise, like, it was kind of a mess. It released as a hot mess. It's been kind of patched, like some of the worst crashes have been patched at this point, but it still doesn't look or run particularly well at all. And that's apparently fine. It sold crazy amounts of copies. There's basically no incentive for publishers to lay off developers and let them make something polished next time because it doesn't matter. So, people are, and I mean, we just did the Jedi Survivor numbers and that thing sold, pretty well. Sounds like.
Yep, I think so. I think it's gonna and it's probably gonna maintain its momentum. We kept talking about like long leg. I think it probably will have those legs and be able to sell throughout the year, regardless of all this. And that's the even on Steam where I expected to be getting trounced. I guess it has a mixed reviews on Steam. That might have changed since this story got published. But it has like around 10,000 reviews and it's mixed. It's like that's actually not too bad. Like I was expecting mostly negative or even overwhelmingly negative. It's like, well,
on Jedi Survivor?
On Jedi Survivor, yeah. Like, that's actually kind of weird. So I'm like, okay, well then, maybe most people are already looking past the bugs. I do wonder if there's a certain getting used to performance issues on PC after such like one game after another having these problems. It's really bad on PC. Yes,
we're playing on PS5 and it's a little iffy, but
it's mostly fine. Yes, on PC it's especially if you're trying to play on anything that's like. Apparently modern PC systems are especially bad. It's like even like a 4090, you can't get 60 frames per second almost no matter what you do. That's pretty messed up.
Stinky.
All right, moving on. Oh, and for that, they promised weeks of improvements. So look forward to that. Look forward to updates on that for the next couple of weeks. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is out in the wild. This is according to a story from Nintendo Everything. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom still has about 2 weeks to go before launch, but spoilers and other leaks of that nature are likely to start today, as a copy of the game has been found in the wild. There's been talk about the situation on places such as Reddit, 4chan, and Discord. Clips of the game have started to circulate online as well, which is why maybe this story probably there's some like credence to this, is people have started posting clips. Unfortunately for Nintendo, their titles tend to leak online before launch, so it wouldn't be surprising to see many others gain access soon. This happens with every big Nintendo game, although it didn't happen with Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. So I'm like, did Nintendo figure something out? And it's probably
it did happen with Advance
Wars. Oh, it did.
Kind of.
Okay,
a little, in a weird way.
Yeah, what happened there? Because I remember this didn't leak. That's weird. But
it leaked a year ago.
Oh, right, that's right. Yes, that person got it. Like that one person was able to play it. I love that story. I'm like that. They're just really funny. Yeah, just accidentally turned on, right?
Yeah.
That's I like that a lot. But yeah, but it's like in terms of it, like leaking and then getting uploaded online, which is going to happen with this game any minute now. This is gonna be everywhere. Nintendo's dealt with this a lot, and at a certain point, it's like there's not much they can do about it. But this does mean leaks. This means spoilers are going to be everywhere. People are going to be posting this stuff all over the place. So kind of got, if you care about those things, you're gonna have to go heads down at least for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. I'm not a big like, oh, don't spoil anything kind of person about most things. I'm kind of like, I try to tread like a reasonable, normal person middle ground of like, talk about the things you like, just like give us a heads up or something first. But man, the Nintendo leaks, I have like, I get real cheesed off about this stuff every time this happens, because Nintendo is very, very stingy with like review code, and they have so many rules about what you can and can't do with it. Their embargoes tend to be ridiculously strict. They are terrified that a person whose literal professional career rides on not, pissing off Nintendo or something is going to leak their game. And that's never the people who are leaking it. It always gets out some other way. Someone steals a copy off a truck, GameStop or Walmart or something breaks street. What even happened here? How did someone get a copy this time?
I mean, no one knows for sure, but I mean, the things you're saying are almost certainly the actual, what happened here is someone took it off of an assembly line or someone took it off the back of a truck. Like it's one of those probably.
Yeah, probably, or something like that. It always happens anyway, and then it gets out online, and then we have to write these reviews where everyone's like, oh, we can't show that screenshot because it has like 3 pixels of a mushroom. Okay, the Pokemon Legends Arceus review, one of the Pokemon that was like under embargo that we weren't allowed to show was Paris. Paris is everywhere in that game. It is all over the place. It chases you all over the map. It's one of the original 150 Pokemon. It is the dumbest thing that we were not allowed to show this Pokemon, but there's Pokemon all over the ground out there. So like, and I guess this might have been the Pokemon company restricting this, not Nintendo, but it's all in the same
similar
camp
though,
of
regardless.
strict reviews. And so any clip that had him in it, we're saying like, oh, throw that one out, throw that one out, throw that one out. Absolute nightmare. I've had so many reviews like this, and then we have, and every single time one of these games leaks, they get stricter on us. And I know this is like deeply first world journalist problems,
sure,
but I'm so annoyed by this.
Nintendo has gone a bit off the deep end with this stuff in the last, let's say, since Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury for no particular reason. And yeah, they basically been like, okay, we're gonna set up your Switch so it explodes on you if you even think about posting this screenshot of Paris. So it's like, oh my god. You're right, and it's like it really has nothing to do with the issue. But try explaining that to Kyoto. Try explaining that to the people in Japan who are actually making these decisions. They don't care. They made the association in their minds, so it's kind of the way it's going to be. These Nintendo games, they always leak. They always get out there. This always happens. Yet their games always tend to sell very, very well. It's kind of a bit of like a hard. It's unintuitive, right? That these two things can happen. Like these are some of the most pirated games. It seems like, at least in my mind. And then they're also always the top selling games. Is it just that the demand for Nintendo games is so high, it kind of doesn't matter?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. Nintendo lives and dies by its IP. It really, really does. It's kind of why they can get away with a lot. Like, every time there's a new console cycle and Nintendo's announcing a new console, the Switch is really cool. I love the Switch with all my heart. But, people are like, oh, well, it doesn't run all these third-party games. Like, it's not going to run, picking an example out of my head, it's not going to run, I don't know, like Cyberpunk 2077 really, really well or something like that. I don't know. Did Cyberpunk get a Switch port? It did not.
It did not. No, it would have been a cloud port.
I was suddenly freaking out. I was like, wait, that wasn't on the Switch.
No,
right?
you're thinking The Witcher. The Witcher got the Impossible port to Switch, and actually
yes.
was pretty okay.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like people worry about that, but it doesn't matter. It functionally doesn't matter because they have all this IP that they can keep to themselves. They have Mario, they have Zelda, they have Samus, they have Kirby, they have the Pikmins, they have all of the guys, and they can just like write on that. They can just if Nintendo walks out and says the word Mario, everybody just starts screaming. So it doesn't matter.
They showed a JPEG of Metroid Prime 4, and people literally did scream. Literally did scream. They were screaming all over that Nintendo store. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
All right, let's move ahead here. New $70 price may negatively impact PS5 game unit sales, data suggests. This comes from Derek Strickland at Tweaktown. While PlayStation 5 hardware is on the rise with record-breaking console sales revenue, PlayStation users are actually buying far fewer games than they have before. Data from Sony and Activision offers a possible explanation on why this is happening. Sony just reported its best ever year for PlayStation earnings, raking in nearly $27 billion in revenue. PS5 console hardware sales were the main driver for this overperformance, with Sony generating a record-breaking $8.297 billion from PS4 and PS5 console sales during the fiscal year 2022. Software revenues were likewise at an all-time high. Data provided by Sony indicates that PlayStation gamers spent $6.367 billion in combined digital and physical software purchases. Hardware is pulling in record numbers, and so is software, but overall game unit sales were down a bit for fiscal year 2022, dropping to 264.2 million games sold, which represents a substantial 39 million unit drop from a year ago. This story goes on to try to explain what is likely happening here, but the gist of it is games cost more now, so people are buying fewer games, and I think that is a sound logic because we know, looking at just the basics of economics, that when you increase the price of something, people buy fewer of those things, right?
Yeah, I would also guess that the reason why their software revenue is still really good is they're counting on ongoing purchases. So yes. You have you're buying the Fortnite Battle Pass, and Sony's getting a cut of that revenue. You're
Duty
you're buying DLC or Call of Duty, yeah, like whatever else is those kinds of purchases. So I would assume that's why that revenue is up.
Yeah, I think that's. I think that
the games being more expensive,
right? The slow shift towards live service games from third-party publishers continues to happen, regardless of what's happening with $70 price games or whatever. So I think you're right. Like that, We say that. I guess we should be like. I think that number should include microtransactions, right? Because this is like software.
If it's just split into hardware and software, it usually is. I don't have the earnings in front of me though, so I could just be talking out of my butt.
Right. I'm like trying like maybe do they ever put service revenue into a different thing? And I think they might. But even if this is just full game sales, software sales, it's I mean I think the increased price is going to cause a little bit of a dip. It's also, I mean, comparing one thing year over year, that's usually pretty fair. But it's like last year it was what you can have Elden Ring, and you do have like the Lego Star Wars, and there was maybe a few slightly fewer games this year than the year before. So it's like it's always
that's kind of that's always the thing you have to take into account when you're looking at like year over year stuff is what happened last year. Like Xbox earnings came out pretty recently, and there was a 30% year over year dip in hardware sales. Well, why was that? Well, it was because 2 years ago they had a lot of hardware sales, but also not as many as they could have had because there were impacts to supply chains. And then 1 year ago, supply chains opened up again. And so they sold just crap tons of Xboxes. And then this year, the supply chains have been open up for a year. Everyone's got their Xbox. So the number went way down. It's not because Xbox are selling poorly or anything like that. It's just because they had a huge jump last year. So you always got to think about like what the comparable is and whether or not it makes sense for it to be up or down in a specific way.
And these companies, I mean, the number they do care about is the dollars. Like it's a business, and so if they're selling fewer but making more money, they will take that every time. And I think that they did the math in their head. You know, they probably did a lot of studies. Like, we're going to raise the price. People will buy fewer. That will happen, but we're going to make more. And here it is proving out. So, like the idea that like nothing in this data suggests that $70 prices are a problem. In terms of what they actually care about, they're making their money. They're going to keep doing this $70 game. So of course, here to stay, right?
Yeah.
Do you think Sony clearly started this generation wanting to kind of get into that Nintendo mind frame where they could put out a game, say this is a big deal, and we're going to keep that price high pretty much going forward as much as we can? Do you think that they're going to be able to maintain $70 prices for on their biggest games for more than a year, 2 years before offering like any big discounts? Or do you think they kind of like slowly go, you know what? Yeah, we're getting those big sales right out the gate, but we probably should get into that discount game as quickly as possible.
Can do it for, I think 2 years is maybe a little, are you talking about like permanent discounts?
Not like, eventually the games do like, just like, a game now that's just $40 now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a couple years is reasonable on that. I mean, we'll still see $70 games going on sale at critical times, right?
Yes.
Like holiday sales, there's usually some sort of Black Friday deals. There's various other sales on. I don't pay close attention to the PlayStation store, so I don't know how often they do discounts, but I have seen them occasionally here and there on big titles. And I know the handful of times whenever they ported games to Steam, they tend to get those discounts as well. So yeah, I don't know if we're going to see them. I imagine within a couple of years, especially if they're coming out with like a sequel to something. So I imagine whenever the next God of War shows up, they'll start dipping down the previous God of Wars. But that might not be for another 4 or 5 years. So
it seems like Nintendo got rid of their Nintendo Selects thing that they used to do, where after so many years, after games sold 1 million copies, they'd be like, all right, now here's a new version of that disc on the shelf with the little band at the top says Nintendo Selects, and it's $20. And they did not do that on the Switch, and they have not done that. That sort of thing probably also isn't going to happen. I think Sony's not going to do that. If they do like the permanent discount, it'll be somewhere between $70 and $40, instead of being like, and now here's like a $20 version of these games. I
expect it to be like 60 or 50 or something. Like bring it in line with the price of a not like big IP.
Yeah, they're trying to shift that window way up to make keep their average revenue per sale as high as possible, which makes sense. All right, moving on. PlayStation Studios boss insists upcoming live service games will target diverse genres and scale. This comes from Andy Robinson at VGC. PlayStation Studios boss Herman Holst has discussed Sony's push into live service games and insisted that the multiple games it has in development will be diverse in both genre and target audience. Sony Interactive Entertainment revealed last year that it's planning to have 12 live service titles in the market by its fiscal year ending in March 2026, up from 3 during its previous business year. This marks a significant pivot for the platform holder, which is best known for blockbuster single-player games like God of War and Last of Us. Speaking to GI.biz, Holst claimed that even though SIE has a significant number of live service games planned for the coming years, that doesn't mean they'll all be modeled on Fortnite or Destiny. Here's a quote from Holst. We understand the competitive environment that is out there and the time investment from players that live services offer, and we want to deliver the highest quality games. There is a risk that we talk about live service in generic terms as if it is a single genre or even a single business model. PlayStation Studios are making a variety of games that could be referred to as live services, targeting different genres, different release schedules, and at different scales. Rebekah, I think the whole idea of doing live service games, it should be like in this vein, because I think the real idea is like they are relatively more affordable to produce than a God of War or The Last of Us. And so you should be able to try a bunch of different things. And if one of them sticks, it pays for everything else and you're good to go. But if you're trying to, if all those things are just trying to be like another Fortnite, that doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really work with the benefits of actually going towards live service. So this sounds like they have a good head on their shoulders about this, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the biggest risk, I think, in terms of what you're talking about is that you kind of have to be prepared for it to go both ways. You have to be prepared for it to blow up and to support it long term, and you have to have content plans ready, but you also have to be prepared for it to crash and burn and to cut your losses and end the game, as we've seen a lot of live service games shutting down in 2023 already, unfortunately. So you have to be ready for both possibilities, or you're going to get caught out and either provide a very poor experience for a lot of players who are very excited about something, or you're going to suddenly shut down and wonder where all your money went.
Yeah, it's you really do want to take advantage of like a bunch of different ideas, because gaming is so hit driven and the next big thing comes out of nowhere. And if you're one of these big companies chasing after live service money, you should lean into kind of letting your teams go kind of wild with creating new ideas, because that's what happens on Steam. It's like Steam, you just open it up, anyone can put anything on there. And then the next big $1 billion game comes out, and it's just nothing anyone else would have thought of. It was just this small team trying stuff. And I think if you have a lot of money, you can maybe like sort of mimic that process a little bit by just letting 12 teams try a bunch of stuff and fail fast. And maybe you crack it, maybe you get a big one. The likely thing is they'll probably get maybe 1-2 of these games to really catch on. And then do one of those games become a world beater? I mean, who knows? But even if it just becomes really profitable, that's probably good enough for Sony. That's trying to make sure that Destiny is their ongoing thing, and then if they have something else that pays for a couple of these other projects, that'll be worth it.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this quote he has about talking about live service in generic terms as if it's a single genre or even a single business model, and that interests me because I can think of a handful of different kinds of live service games, like broadly that are out there in multiple.
Yes.
Like there's multiple live service shooters. There's the entire like sports genre, like all the FIFAs and NBA 2Ks and games like that. There's kind of whatever's going on with fighting games, and then there's like a few other things, I guess, like The Sims, I guess I would classify as a live service game, sort of,
basically,
in its way, kind of.
In so many ways, yeah.
A little bit. But I want, the optimist in me wants this to surprise me. I want him to be saying this because I want I don't know, like, what does a live service, it's like Stardew Valley look like? Or what is a live service, I don't know, some monster capturing game look like? Like what does a live service like environmental exploration kind of thing look like? What do all these things look like? And I would love to see more genres explore what it means to be in their worlds for longer and longer periods of time, in sort of more inventive ways. Or maybe that's just me inviting people to ask me to pay them money. Maybe I don't want that, actually.
We're long past that, Reb. I think we are well, and they're like, we're basically looking where we could pay money wherever we can. It's too late for us.
Genshin Impact is a live service game.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're seeing exactly what you're talking about. MiHoYo's games are like, hey, let's take or that new Persona mobile game. Let's just make a fucking Persona, turn it into a kind of a gacha and put on mobile, but it's really, when you play it, it's a full-fledged Persona game. It's like, okay, I think that's kind of cool. There's clearly, as long as you keep making the other stuff, I'm like fully on board with all these things. Because I don't want to usually be thinking about my wallet too much when I'm playing games, but I'll make the rare exception for something I'm super into, and people are finding the things that they're super into. But live service can fit a lot of different models. I think back to like Hitman 2016 when that came out, and I'm like, oh, this is what live service looks like for a single player ongoing experience, where the game is built in such a way that you want to keep going back to it over and over and over again. And to facilitate that, the developers are going to drop remixes of their content alongside new content, alongside completely different things that you never even thought of. It's like, well, it didn't work out business-wise for Square Enix at the time, but it's definitely something that's found its footing after a few different attempts at that idea. And now Hitman 3, or Hitman World of Assassination as it's called, is clearly an ongoing live service thing in a very small way, where it's like not trying to absorb all your money, but it is something that's going to be able to live on. It's like, well, if that's one of the things that Sony tries, cool. And then I fully expect them to like, and here is SOCOM, a military shooter where you can dress up as Ronald McDonald or whatever if you want to pay us $10. Like, I expect them to do that as well.
Yeah.
Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection sales surpassed 1 million copies worldwide. This comes from Nintendo Everything. Capcom has announced a sales milestone for Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, with it already selling over 1 million copies. That applies to all platforms worldwide. Capcom didn't provide a breakdown of Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection's performance by region. However, we do know that as of April 23rd, total sales of physical copies on Switch in Japan stand at 58,000 units. 1 million units for this already is really good. That's like makes it one of the fastest selling Mega Man games ever, I think.
Yeah, it does. That's certainly up there.
It's impressive.
A lot. Do people really like Battle Network that much? It wasn't bad. It was one of the 2 Mega Man games I've actually played. Battle Network Blue, I think, is what I played. I don't remember. But I wasn't aware there was a surge of nostalgia for Battle Network. Cool.
I think it's hitting at the right time. I mean, we've seen GameCube nostalgia be really high for a long time, and then it's like, well, Game Boy Advance right alongside that. And I mean, there's few games I associate more with Game Boy Advance than Mega Man Battle Network, even though I never really played them. It's like that they were always right there. There was one coming out every year. Even still, like, I think they were popular. 1 million units already is way more popular than I was expecting. Yeah. That's wild. Mega Man 11, for comparison, is the best-selling release in the franchise at 1.6 million copies worldwide. So it's already on its way to beating that. I don't know if this is Battle Network so much as people are feeling good about Capcom, feeling good about Mega Man, wanting to support. I mean, clearly Battle Network is a big part of it, but I think if they were to put out a new Mega Man right now that seemed to have a lot of love put into it, I think it would just pop off. I think it would be massive. Do you agree with that?
When was the last, numbered Mega Man game? 11, where are we at on the Mega Mans?
So it is Mega Man 11, or
really?
9, 10, 11. Yeah, I always try to, it's 11.
The Mega Mans.
Yeah, and that came out 2019, maybe 2017, in that range. So it's been a couple of years, and they I know that Mega Man 11 came out, and 1.6 million is not bad. It is the best selling in the franchise history, but it definitely did not live up to what Capcom was hoping. Or so I've heard. And so it's like, okay, I think they definitely put it to the side, and then they had Resident Evil popping off and Monster Hunter popping off, and so they were fine. But I think now that they have those things as such well-oiled machines, they're looking for other franchises to either bring back or prop up, and they're going to try to do that with Dragon's Dogma. I think they should try to do it with Mega Man.
Yeah, maybe it's time for another crack at Mega Man. I'll be honest, my Mega Man knowledge is really limited, and I'm showing it right now. I've played Mega Man X, and I've played the Battle Network Blue ? Maybe that was the one. But I was watching my partner play some various Mega Man games last week, and they all sounded made up to me. None of them had Mega Man in them. And I know this is me sounding like an idiot in front of Mega Man people. I'm so sorry, but I was just looking at it, and I didn't understand what was happening. And so Mega Man has just sort of gone off somewhere, and I don't know how people feel about it or what's even going on with Mega Man now, but I'm happy for all the Mega Man people who are eating well lately.
Yes, I'm happy for them as well. And this is not your fault, Reb. Come on, Mega Man is absurd with its various different franchises going all different directions, and there's a Z and an X and a 0 and a And they're all boy robots. It's weird. I don't know. I struggle with it as well. Lego confirms Donkey Kong sets are coming. This comes from Sean Hollister at The Verge. Donkey Kong has been around as long as Mario himself, but this August will be the first time he's officially appeared in Lego form on August 1st.
Eggo waffles.
Lego my Eggo first. The Danish toy maker is adding 4 Lego Donkey Kong sets to the ever-widening Lego Super Mario lineup. They aren't filled with ladders, hammers, fireballs like the original arcade game, but these sets are straight out of Donkey Kong Country instead. It actually looks pretty good. I'm going to try to bring it up here in a second for everybody. Basically, like there's a big one, a Diddy Kong minecart ride expansion for $110. Looks very cute. I'm very into it. I'll bring this up.
They've got Funky Kong in there. Yeah.
Yes, the funkiest of the Kongs.
Oh, we love him.
Yeah, I like these Lego Mario sets.
Funky! Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I put them together, and then my kids usually play with them, and then we lose a bunch, and that's kind of a bummer. But I still enjoy putting them together. But yeah, there's the $110 minecart one. There is, which is right here. There's a $27 Dixie Kong's Jungle Jam.
Funny.
Yeah, with her bird, and then $11 you can get Rambi the Rhino.
Yay!
Big fan.
Oh,
big fan of
I love this. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. They teased this last week, and it's cool to see, like, oh, it's not just like one little thing. They're doing a whole bunch of stuff with Donkey Kong. Do you think the circumstantial evidence is piling up that Nintendo's doing something with the Donkey Kong video game? Donkey Kong heavily featured in the movie. The rumors they're doing a Donkey Kong movie spinoff. They're the next big expansion at Universal after Super Nintendo World opens will be a Donkey Kong ride. We're getting this. I mean, do you think they're working on a Donkey Kong game?
Massive disclaimer, I have no insider knowledge whatsoever. I know how things go on this show. Please don't make an era thread about
Hell
this.
Yes. There it is.
Yes, I would be shocked. I would be absolutely shocked if they were not making a Donkey Kong thing. I want to know who's working on it is the thing, because like Tropical Freeze was incredible. Everybody loved it. It sold well. They remade it again on the Switch and put funky mode in it. It was great, but that was retro.
Yes,
Retro's a little busy right now.
Very busy, yes.
They've been a little busy for a while. Making a little something starts with an M. Not Monkey Kong.
Monkey Kong. I was gonna say the same thing. It's a dumb joke. I'm glad we both thought of it.
So I don't know who you hand that off to that has like the same kind of track record of doing those things well, or if you bring it back in house, or what you do. Because the thing I want in my heart of hearts is like a sequel to Tropical Freeze, but maybe that's not what I get.
Would you want let's say there's a handful of rumors and none of these are verified, and I don't know either.
Don't make a thread.
Don't make a thread, please. There was the one rumor that the Mario team, the Super Mario Odyssey team, Bowser's Fury team, that they are working on a Donkey Kong game. And let's say it's a 3D Donkey Kong game from that team. Would that strike your fancy?
Like a spiritual sequel to Donkey Kong 64?
Definitely not. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's what I want.
I think it's the first time I played a game and I was just like, I know this game is bad pretty much right away. I do.
Oh, it's terrible. It's horrible. It does not age well at all, but I love it with all my heart.
It's easy to love. Absolutely.
I would love a new crack at a 3D world in Donkey Kong. Like everybody has a lot of nostalgia for Donkey Kong 64. It is objectively bad. We haven't. I don't think we've done a 3D Donkey Kong game ever since. Right?
No, not really. No.
Everyone I can think of is side scrolling. So they should give it another shot. I think we've figured out 3D games in the last, however many years it's been.
Kirby got a 3D game recently.
Kirby got a 3D game.
It's time to give a lot of these other characters that have either had previous missteps into 3D or never really tried 3D a chance. I think the next Yoshi game should be 3D. They should make Donkey Kong should get a 3D game. I would like that. There was also that other rumor that Nintendo partnered with Activision, and I think it was Toys for Bob, and they were working on a Donkey Kong game. And then
I would have been into that.
And then it got moved over to Nintendo, and Nintendo took it over. Again, who knows if that's real? That sounds pretty wild, but Nintendo's done stuff like that before, and it seems like that would have made sense like a handful of years ago. It's like Nintendo looking for partners to take on stuff. That makes sense.
The problem problem is it sounds like it makes too much sense.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Toys for Bob, or again, it was one of those.
That's the logical thing to do, of course. Why would
makes too much sense? I agree with that. That's a very good point. All right, let's move ahead here to Super Mario Brothers movie tops 1 billion worldwide, smashes studio records in Japan. This comes from Nancy Tartaglione at Deadline. Illumination Nintendo Universal's The Super Mario Brothers movie has got a super game as it levels up to cross 1 billion. I swear every one of these stories from like a Hollywood trade always says levels up. It's leveling up to, and then say every single one uses that phrase. It now becomes the 10th animated film in history to cross 1 billion worldwide and is the 10th biggest animated film of all time globally, overtaking Despicable Me 2 and Minions: The Rise of Gru, which I'm always surprised to realize that those movies were like right at 1 billion. Yeah, they're bigger than the Minions. Yep.
The kids love them.
This movie just came out in Japan, and it's setting records there. On 776 screens, the start was a huge 14.3 million to score the biggest opening weekend ever for an animated studio movie, as well as the biggest Saturday box office in Universal history in Japan, topping Jurassic World Dominion. In only 2 days, Super Mario became the fastest Universal film to reach 1 billion yen, and the weekend result is the biggest Universal opening of all time. So, yeah, that was always going to help the idea that this late opening in Japan. But yeah, $1 billion, people have been predicting it for a long time. It's already there. It's kind of hard to like put into terms just how big this movie is, right?
Again, Nintendo walks out the door and says Mario, and everybody screams. That's exactly what happened here.
That's what I'm still doing.
Yeah, I'm actually. It's definitely made me question my sense, like rethink my sense of scale in terms of how much movies make, right? Because in my mind, I'm actually surprised it wasn't bigger. But that comes from a misunderstanding of how popular certain movies are, as opposed to
right. I mean, listen, movies aren't as big as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Reb. Let's give them a chance. All right, there's no world in which they could ever make that much money. But
like the biggest animated CG whatever movie was Lion King, right?
Yes, the new Lion King. Yes,
right. Which breaks my brain.
Wow. Yes.
Why is that the biggest one? What?
Because we live in a nightmare.
If you told me that the biggest animated movie was Lion King, but it was the old animated one, I would be maybe shocked that we were throwing that much money at movies during that time. I would be a little confused because I don't think movies made that much back then. But I would nod and say, yeah, that probably makes sense.
Same.
Sure. No, it wasn't that. It was the bad one.
It's the bad one shot on the volume and where things barely move. Yeah, it's rough. Yeah. It's rough out there for people who want to try to have sane takes on the film industry, because it doesn't make any sense when you look at it. Absolutely. No. This movie probably ends up settling around somewhere around 1.2 to 1.5 billion. That's huge. It's so big, and
piles of money.
It's like we talk about it every week on the show at this point now, but it's kind of hard. Like once it hits these milestones, it's hard not to. We've talked about what it means for Nintendo making movies, and it's going to come fast and furious here pretty soon. I guess the question we always ask, hey, what are they going to do next? If we know that it's going to be more Mario movies, more the Donkey Kong spinoff, what do you think they do after that?
Well, I don't want to spoil the Mario movie, but they did sort of nod at what they're going to do next.
Yes.
So I think they'll do that probably. But yeah, I would love to see some sort of Donkey Kong thing. Personally, you know what I want? I want Luigi's Mansion.
I really want that too. That's actually, people were looking at some Illumination artists' LinkedIn's, and they spotted some stuff that seemed to suggest Luigi's Mansion actually might be the very next one. While a sequel to the Super Mario movie might be coming down the line to link into that post-credit scene that you were alluding to, in the meantime, a Luigi's Mansion movie for Halloween, 2025, that would be
my heart. I would love that.
I mean, and that, of course, that game, one of the biggest sellers of all time. It's our meme on this show. It's like a new game will launch from Sony or Microsoft. It's and it doesn't sell nearly as much as with Luigi's Mansion 3. So hey, that's the real moneymaker right there, finally coming.
The gem of the game.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's so good. I can't wait to see what that studio does next. I even really liked their soccer game that everyone really hates, Mario Soccer, for Switch, just because they're so good at animation. All right, let's hit these last couple of stories. Xenoblade developer Monolith Soft raises staff salaries across the company. This comes from Lana Hagues at Nintendo Life. Monolith Soft has revealed that it's increasing all staff salaries for all employees at the company from April 2023. Basic salaries have been increased in line with rising prices, the developers announced on its website. The raise affects everyone working at the company. That includes graduates who will receive a 22% increase in their starting salary to 250,000 yen. This includes new graduates starting this year too, which is fantastic news, says the story. This is, I mean, we've seen these stories a bunch of times, especially coming out of Japan. Japan's had a pretty stagnant wages for quite some time. You know, when I pointed that story out, or pointed it out last time, I kind of looked at it. Some people pointed some things out where it's like, oh, they have so many other benefits there, and the culture just makes it so like those wage increases weren't super necessary, but eventually the market does dictate at a certain point you got to pay these employees more because talent is finite and they are going to work at other studios, and if you want to keep them there, you got to give them more money, and it's that simple, right?
Yep. Good for I'm good. More studios should do this.
Yep. And it's
especially in the US where things are wages across the games industry are an interesting large topic, but I have noticed some unrest around that in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, inflation has just washed away a lot of any sort of increase in wage that you do get. That inflation is just kind of crushing that, so people are going to be hurting from it and looking around. And you can look at wage increases and be like, well, that's going to cause more inflation, and so that's not really how it works. There's very little evidence that just wages actually do lead to a ton of inflation. So it's like it's like a lagging indicator of inflation did happen, and now these companies have to pay up because they've been making more money and they need to pay up to their employees. So
everybody's got record profits year after year, but increasingly wages are not going up with them, and there is quite a bit of outsourcing to studios in other countries where they can afford to pay people a lot less, which pay them more too. So
Yeah, well, I mean, bring more of those studios into the fold, which continues to happen. I think studios in Brazil and Mexico that have been support studios for years now are becoming the targets of acquisition here pretty quickly, and hopefully, as that happens, they get taken care of even more.
Oh yeah.
All right, last story here. Zelda's Adventure for the Philips CDi has now been ported to Game Boy using GB Studio. This comes from My Nintendo News. The Philips CDi console featured a few The Legend of Zelda games which were never ported to another console. One was The Legend of Zelda, Link, The Faces of Evil, and then The Faces of Evil, Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon, and the final one was Zelda's Adventure. Creative mastermind John Lay decided to release a complete port of the CDi original and was developed in GB Studio. With a few modifications, you can play it in a browser or download it and play it however you want. I'm going to probably play it on my analog pocket. I got video of this thing. It looks incredible. It looks so cool. He did a really good job on it. Let's see if I can play this. Oh, that's too loud. Let me turn that down. There we go. It's like you could see the CDI version, and it looks like bad 90s pre-rendered stuff. Basically, it just looks now for the Game Boy version. It just looks like Link's Awakening. It looks fantastic. I'm so into this.
Wow, look at that. That's adorable.
Yes, it looks adorable. And I'm like, I want to play this. And you get to play as Zelda, of course. And you can see the comparison shot right here. It's this is very cool. I'm very into anyone doing this. Like, I'm gonna go get it now before Nintendo nukes it off the face of the planet. So, pretty cool.
That I don't think I've ever seen the original game like played in front of me before. That style is so fascinating.
This is like the third really obscure one of these where people know Wand of Gamelon. They know the FMV sort of games.
Yeah, I know those two. Yeah.
Yes, this one people talk about a lot less, and I actually the name always escapes me. It's just Zelda's Adventure.
In my heart of hearts, what I want is like an official version of this that lets you swap freely between the two visual styles.
That would be fantastic. That'd be very cool.
Yeah, because you're right that the new one is much easier to read and understand, but there's just so much personality in the original one. It reminds me a little bit of like the style of Moon and some of the ones that have kind of that not quite realistic, but almost like it's like somewhere between realism and like clay.
Yes, it was clay. Yeah, there's a clay element to it. Absolutely, I see that. And it's I look at that CDI one and I have a hard time looking away. I'm like I'm kind of. I'm a little repulsed, but that makes me just want to smell it a little bit more. What's going on in there? You weird little Philips CDI system.
Shout out to say John Lay did this?
Yes. John Lay.
That's great. Win for game preservation. Thank you.
John Lay _ on Twitter. Give him a shout out. It's pretty cool. The GB Studio is just a little tool. You can make your own Game Boy games. People do some really cool stuff with that thing. That's all awesome. Right. I'm going to bring up the poll from Friday where I asked, should remakes be considered for Game of the Year? 64.2% of you said yes, they should, while 35.8% said no. Reb, what's your take? When you get to Game of the Year, are you going to consider Resident Evil 4? And how about Metroid Prime? Is that not quite a remake? What do you think?
We're saying like full remakes, right? Not just like a remaster.
You know what? I'm going to ask you. You define it for me. What do you think when I say that without giving you any more information? What do you think?
Resident Evil 4 is a new game built from the ground up. Like it's structurally in Resident Evil 4. It has the same story and the same beats, but it is a new game fundamentally, and I think it should be considered. I think if you have just sort of freshened things up a little bit, maybe not. Like it's tough to draw a line, right? Like this did not come out this year, but I just last night finished playing Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask I played the 3DS version.
Yep, the one to play.
It is a remake.
It is.
And there are some things that are improved about it, but it is like moment to moment still Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask from like the N64 in basically every way. But Resident Evil 4 adds like a bunch of new stuff. It's like if you put the two games side by side, you'd be like, no, this is a different game. So it's hard, and it's always very wishy-washy, but I feel like I would consider RE4, but maybe something that was a little more step for step exactly the same, less so.
I think that the way you just talked it out right there is why it's probably okay to consider most games for Game of the Year, because as you sort of reason it out and speak it out loud, it's very easy to be like, well, I mean, Resident Evil 4 clearly rises up to consideration. And here's why a game that's like maybe similar, but isn't fully remade in these ways doesn't. And then you just sort of eliminate it naturally without having to put any sort of arbitrary bumpers around the proceedings to say, we're not even going to talk about that game. I think talking about more games is a good thing when you're doing Game of the Year. And then if you get some weird thing where it's like, oh, that game shouldn't be considered. It's like, oh, well, you know what? Good news. None of this stuff matters. This is all just made up. It's basically just professional wrestling for video games where we're just throwing them in there and have them bash against one another. The fun stuff is the conversations we have along the way, right?
Exactly. That's the other thing. Game of the Year is fake. It's made up. We all just made it up. It means nothing. You get to decide your own criteria. My favorite thing when I was at gamesindustry.biz, we did not Game of the Year, but we did like games of like whatever year. And you could list literally anything you played that year. And you just wrote a piece about whatever your favorite thing you played that year was. Did not matter what it was. I think Chris Dring, our publisher, wrote about Sea of Thieves 2 or 3 years in a row. Who cares? Yeah. It's made up.
Exactly. It's
your own criteria and judge your whatever according to whatever criteria you picked and live your life.
Here. Exactly. That's exactly how I feel. Fucking A. All right. I got a new poll question I'm writing up right now. While I do that, though, Reb, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you got going on this week, all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Duck Valentine, and you can find my work at IGN.com/person/Duck Valentine if you want to see my recent articles. I've been writing a lot, as I said at the top of the show, about the CMA's ruling on the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft, or potentially lack thereof at this point. I've been doing a lot of like analysis and kind of breakdowns of what exactly happened, because I think maybe if you just sort of glance at it or haven't been paying attention, you maybe don't really understand what's going on or why it's significant or why they made the decision they did. And so I try to break that down for folks who don't want to read through 418 pages of documentation. That's what I did.
That's called service journalism right there, where you have rendered a service upon us all. I appreciate that. I got the new poll up. Let me go ahead and bump to that real quick. There it is. I asked, with Lego Donkey Kong, DK at Universal, DK and Mario movie, and a possible DK movie, is Nintendo preparing us for a big new Donkey Kong game? Yes, no. We'll get to that on Game S Mornings on Giant Bomb on Wednesday. Speaking of Giant Bomb, we will have the Giant Bomb cast will be happening tomorrow live. Be sure to tune in for that. We'll have some of our friends on that episode to talk about some stuff happening over at GameSpot. We will have Blight Club on Thursday. Before that, we will have the Connectivity Compadres on Wednesday, playing Four Swords Adventures. It's been a lot of fun. We're going to get back to that after taking a week off. And then watch some of the stuff we put up last week. Hyrule Hustle was really good. Robo Mitch, the Blight Club episodes were really good. Check in on all that. And then as far as coverage for new games, we'll probably have some stuff for Redfall. We'll probably be playing some other new stuff this week. Look out for all of that. In the meantime, though, Reb, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad we finally did this.
Me too. And it won't be the last time. I'll have you on again soon. I'll probably see you at Summer Game Fest, stuff like that. Looking forward to all that. Really looking forward to it. Thank you all for watching and listening. You're the best audience in gaming. We'll be back very soon on Wednesday, like I said. Until then, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.